Welcome to Zero's Game Room, where all things gaming takes place. Interviews, discussions, and the latest gaming news. So take a seat, get comfortable, adjust your headset, because it's game time. Here's your host, Zero.
Welcome to Zero's Game Room, the podcast where we talk about all things gaming. Now, here's the thing. I'm going solo dolo because I like going solo. And no, I'm just kidding. But we are going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the potential with my friend, Onpred. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Zero. Thank you very much. I took a shower this time. I feel great. I'm ready to roll. Whatever you want to talk about.
Did you get a good night's rest, buddy?
Oh, I did, buddy. You know, I thought I was going to stay in your room the whole time, but you kicked me out. I got some lunch, and then I came back.
We don't live together. We don't roommate together. We work together, but that's about it.
Oh, I confused
but today, on today's show, we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the potential when it comes to indie games, because as time has gone on, the indie market has actually really grown. Let's take it back a couple years to when Super Meat Boy came out. Do you remember Super Meat Boy?
I do remember Super Meat Boy.
Like, it was so revolutionary because it was like, oh, this is not from like a third-party development or like a first party. These were people who created a love child, and granted, it was very difficult.
True,
but
very
difficult. It was very fun. And I mean, look, you being a Switch owner, you see how much indie content is on the Switch, right?
I do. I see it heavily plagued the Switch market, but I do like the indie games. I do like when they come out and they say, hey, a passionate group of developers and game makers are like, hey, I have this really great idea. I know how much I'm going to love it. I know how much you're going to love it. It's more like, can you just contribute to it so our dreams can become a reality? And things like Super Meat Boy, Binding of Isaac has came out and everybody loves those and they always been talk of the town. And you already know those classics. They're in the staple of the industry. So I'm glad there's things like that in the Kickstarter.
I would highly, highly agree. Now, Super Meat Boy is one of those like Cinderella stories. It came out, things were a little bit rough, but it came out and it was pretty much loved by a majority. Not all Kickstarter stories have that, as was produced, I do believe, in the year 2016. Wow, has it really been 2 years since this happened?
2 years. For old.
Yeah, when we got Mighty Number 9.
Yes.
Just uttering the words Mighty Number 9 hurts my soul, because this is a project who was kind of, written by, and kind of the backbone of it was the grandfather of Mega Man, Keiji Inafune. The screenshots looked great. This looked like a rebirth of the Blue Bomber, and all it did was bomb. I mean, it tanked.
It did.
Like, what was your experience with Mighty Number 9?
I just remembered everybody's expectations. I mean, right before I was like, oh my god, Mighty Number 9, Mighty Number 9. And then after that, I remember him saying, hey, it's going to be delayed. And everyone's like, what? What's going on? Why is it being delayed? He's like, it just takes more time. We're like, oh, okay. And then the hype started building up. And then when he keeps delaying a game like Mighty Number 9, people are thinking, oh my god, this is going to be the best game of all time. It's going to go past Mega Man, past its glory. And then when you got it, you're like, what the heck?
Yeah, no, honestly, because what ended up happening, it was so bad, because what ended up happening is like more and more goals were being set for this thing. Like, oh, we're gonna add online multiplayer, we're gonna add this. And like they just kept destroying goals. Like the original goal was like 50,000, then it was like 100,000, then 300,000, then 500,000, then 1 million, then like 2 million, and like the backing for it was tremendous. Like people just kept breaking the record. And just they wanted this game so badly, and what we got was a high resolution PS2 game.
Woo!
If that. Now don't get me wrong. No. I enjoyed very much my years with the PS2, but man, dude, the lava looked like really bad CGI cheese.
Oh yeah,
is that just me?
No, I totally agree with you. I think people need to understand that I think there's a difference between aesthetics and people going to like, hey, like pixel, like Undertale. We have pixel graphics since forever. And like things like Undertale, that's the aesthetic. If you have Mighty Number 9 to people, which, hey, I want the reimagining of Mega Man, it was more like an easy cop-out to be like, okay, it's easier and it's cheaper to just use the PS2 graphics, let's just scrap everything else. It was more of that feeling.
And let's come up with some weird game design and some weird bosses, and the voice acting is terrible. Like, what were they thinking with these voice actors? It was just a really bad time, and people were pissed. Now, to some extent, I get it. You paid money for a product. But something I want to tell people is, like, if you're donating your money, don't expect anything huge in return. Like, I would say set your expectations low, because if you shoot them too high and they don't meet those expectations, you're going to be like, wow, yeah, this game sucked. But, like, there are other games that have had interesting stories. We've had success stories, too. We talked about Super Meat Boy. Shovel Knight was huge. I think it's still getting DLC to this day.
Yeah, and I believe it's also free DLC, and they always keep pumping out really great ideas, and the DLC themselves, I'm not sure if you played them or not, but the DLC with themselves are like the bosses from the original Shovel Knight, and you get more backstory and more of what was that universe expanded on.
Right, and didn't they bring in, like, other characters you could play as, or something to that avail? Like, I granted, I haven't dug deep, no pun intended, dug deep into a Shovel Knight, but they brought in, like, more bosses. They expanded this little game into a bigger universe.
It was, you would never think in a million years Shovel Knight, a small game like it came out before from Yacht Studios, would ever do something like that, and it was a great success, and even appeared on Yooka-Laylee, and I know how much you don't like Yooka-Laylee. Maybe.
It's not that I don't, and I kind of want to touch on that, but let's keep talking about the good while we can. We've talked about the bad. We've had things, you know, a little bit something about, like, Tabletop Simulator. What can you explain that a little bit to people? Because I was like, what the hell is Tabletop Simulator? That sounds ridiculous.
Tabletop Simulator is an amazing thing. So, me personally, I like to play board games. I like to play card games. And Tabletop Simulator, it's more like a tool. Like, think of it like Skyrim. It's kind of like Skyrim, but it's so much better. So, Tabletop Simulator gives you the tools and say, hey, there's your chess, there's your checkers, and you get to play with people on whatever you want to. And then it turned out to be that there's this great modding community, and you have people that are making, like, Battleship. People are, like, taking products that you have from your childhood, and they're making Uno, and it's making it so much easier. There's games where I'm able to play Dungeons and Dragons, where I've had the Dungeon Master himself making it so much easier. There's dice. You don't have to go out. Like, he makes stories himself, and it's just super a convenient tool to say, hey, I want to play with my friends. I'm always have them all the time. I want to go back to the classics of just playing a board game. And you don't have to get all four of your friends together, meet in one location, because I know, especially from me and you working together, it's very hard to meet in different places at the exact same time. So I think it's a really great game. And also another thing I want to touch on is, I know this isn't technically a game, but the Oculus Rift. The Oculus Rift was really great on Kickstarter. And it even had its own industry. And it even had competition from Steam with, oh my god, I just lost what it was.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. And then PlayStation, they have the PlayStation VR too. So there's the competition in that as well.
Oh my god, I'm going to get so pissed. I don't know what it was.
It's okay. We don't have to remember exactly what it was, but we do know that the Oculus Rift was part of this, like, whole Kickstarter thing, which that's a topic in and of itself. Like, the future of video games and being VR. Now, you know, I want you to tell a quick story if you can, because this is kind of diving back into a little bit of the good / arguably the bad about the Oculus Rift, because you actually went out and bought one.
I did. I had my expectations so high. It was, I was like a kid at a candy store when I finally got the thing in my box. I was like, yeah, there's weight to it. I can feel the controllers. When I got to it, I set it in my home. It was super convenient. I got everything ready. And then it just blew on my face. And even though we're talking about indie games, there's a lot of indie games that even go on the Oculus Rift. So we can say the good of this Oculus Rift or the VR industry was Oculus Rift. But the potential and maybe the bad was its games. I had many times where if you have glasses, good luck. And I mean, good luck. Because when I had the Oculus Rift, it would not fit in my head at all. I had a lot of problems trying to just look through the thing with my glasses, so I had to take those off and have bad eyesight. Not legally blind or anything, but I had good enough eyesight to where I had to be compromised with the kind of experience that the developers were giving me. And just another thing would just be that it's mediocre. It was really mediocre. It's like I just got the Wii again and they're like, oh, here's Wii bowling, here's Wii shooting, here's Wii this. And it just didn't feel great, man. I just spent like $30-$40 on the Steam market. And again, these weren't sales either. These were full hard games that I bought full priced, and it just wasn't that great of an experience.
And the Oculus Rift itself was like hyper expensive, wasn't it?
Alone, it's $400. Alone, it's $400.
Oh my gosh.
And you're just like, oh my goodness.
Lo and behold, you did return it though, right?
I did return it. I did actually buy an Oculus Rift once from Amazon, and I got a defective unit, so I had to take that back. Wait another 2 weeks, got my money back, went to go buy it at Best Buy, and I just returned it 2 days later. And I'm like,
oh my
hey
god!
man,
So
just nah.
I think that needs some more time to fully be fleshed out and developed. I feel like it's very early in the alpha stages. Now, granted, people have fun with VR and stuff, but I still think we need a little bit more time for people to develop specifically. Because I do think potentially and arguably VR has a setting at the table of video game lifestyle.
Oh, of course.
But how soon? I don't know.
And I think people are kind of tiresome because I think the Oculus Rift has been out for like 2 years, 1 or 2 years,
something along those lines.
Yeah, something like that. And they're just like, man, I just want that good VR experience. I want that industry to be fleshed out. And it's like, nah, man, you got to wait your time before it's ready to be a full on thing.
Right, exactly. Now Oculus falls into this weird good/bad part of the indie world. But then let's jump back again to good. Cuphead,
it's good.
It's good. I actually think it's a lot of fun. Me and Grayson Live, we actually play it a lot on. Like we haven't talked about it too much on the show, but we eventually will probably do a review about it. What I don't like is that people are calling it like the Dark Souls. I hate that Dark Souls is like
Souls, yeah.
Like dark. It's like if a game's difficulty is rated on, it's the Dark Souls, and it's like, it's not really like the Dark Souls of this genre.
No.
But I do like that this was a Kickstarter. This was a crowdfunded thing, and the two developers, like, they spent years on this thing. What was it, like 8 years on working on Cuphead?
I think so. And not only that, it was also hand-drawn. Everything was hand-drawn and with love. And I love Cuphead. I love Cuphead.
I love that because you feel the love that was put in by the developers. Hand-drawn. This is a love project that they put their heart and soul. And it's very reminiscent to like 1980s Disney cartoons. At least the art style.
Like I was saying before, the whole aesthetic thing, like with Mighty Number 9, the aesthetic, it wasn't there. It wasn't that Mega Man. But when you have like Undertale was going through that pixel aesthetic, like this was great because Cuphead was more about 1930s, 1940s, and you had that aesthetic, and they captured that without being, it's the Unreal Engine, and it has to be the Dark Souls.
It didn't need all
that perfectly, and I loved it for it.
Oh, absolutely. Because going back to Mighty Number 9, it's like it wasn't there. It wasn't there. Like,
it wasn't there. No,
I get triggered easily. You know me. I'm a huge Mega Man /Zero/ that universe of stuffs. I love Mega Man. It's my thing. My name is goddamn Zero. It's there's a point. Okay. Now we've talked about the good here, Cuphead. We've talked about the bad, but let's talk about the gray area. I like to call the potential. And out of any game that I can think of, the one off the top of my head, because it didn't flop, but it didn't rise to the occasion, and that would be the indie game, the spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie, Yooka-Laylee.
It had everything going for it. I'll say that. It had everything going for it. The developers themselves, they were
part of the original Rare team, actually.
Yeah.
The ones that, so again, this is another Keiji Inafune Mighty Number 9 thing where everything should have been going easy peasy lemon squeezy, but it just did not go in that way.
It fell short. You're like, you think people like these are like gonna just, they have the reputations, and that's the biggest thing that you have on Kickstarter, your reputation. And when you have people like this with Yooka-Laylee that flop, we'll get more into it, but that flop, you just lose your trust, especially with Mighty Number 9. You had him, the big honcho, just waiting to
Keiji Inafune.
And he flopped it, and you're like, when is it going to stop?
That's like saying, Masahiro Sakurai, the creator of Smash Brothers and Kirby, if he came out with like a Super Smash Brothers game and it was just terrible. It's like,
oh my god.
Yeah, it's that type of impact. Like, I really want people to understand. That's like saying, like, how could something so right go so wrong? You know what I mean? Like, how is that possible? And I don't think... See, here's the thing. Yooka-Laylee had a lot of potential because we haven't seen Banjo-Kazooie since, like, I mean, you could arguably say the 360 because Nuts and Bolts came out on the 360, but that wasn't really a Banjo-Kazooie game.
We don't count that. No, right friends don't count that. I think it was more
I'm glad.
N64.
We don't talk about that. So realistically, realistically, the last time we talk about Banjo-Kazooie is Banjo-Tooie, and even then, for me personally, I felt like Banjo-Tooie did a little too much. There's too much to do in that game.
Yeah.
To, teach their own. I prefer Banjo-Kazooie. I love that game. I grew up on that game on the N64, but this had everything going right for it. You had the duo. You have the Yuka and Laylee. You got the bat. You got the chameleon. I like that. I really kind of like the idea of the two working together. And the aesthetic, going back to that, it was kind of there. It wasn't super Banjo-Kazooie, but it was like a high definition. It didn't need to be over the top.
It was like that cartoon look.
Yes, exactly. But what I think where it felt short the mostly is like they were trying. It's a couple of things. One, the world, there's only like 5 worlds and they're huge. They're massive. But I would have preferred, and I feel like a majority of people would have preferred a Banjo-Kazooie style where the worlds are still relatively big, but
there's so much to do.
Yeah, and like let's spread it out, not just one gigantic level. I gotta do like 2 hours worth of this. No, like give me a good amount of stuff, but give me little levels everywhere. Let me explore, And I get the idea. Like I think their ideas were a little too big, and it kind of fell flat on its face. And second of all, I feel, how do I put this? It's something. How do I put this? I'm trying to find the words to put it. It's hard because like everything was supposed to go right with this game, but the ambitions were too high.
The nostalgia?
The people. Exactly. That's exactly the nostalgia. Yeah. People's expectations were too damn high. Like, wouldn't you agree?
I totally agree with you 100%. I think the fans had expectations way too high. I think the developers I think they did it because they want to give back to the fans and they had high hopes, but and then we got it and you're like, what happened? And then I think a game that would have been like a 7 out of 10 were like a 5 out of 10, and you're like, no, let's give credit to that. They delivered, and they actually did a lot. If you had to compare it to Mighty Number 9, I think Yooka-Laylee beats it out headstrong.
Oh yeah, I agree. I 100% agree.
I just believe it just fell through the hype. I think it's just like, man, why am I not going 10 years back to when I played the original Banjo-Kazooie? And it's just, that's not the messiah of Banjo-Kazooie. I think we're gonna have to wait for them to come back with another platformer.
And what really sucked as well was on launch date, I feel like it wasn't finished because they had to release some patches because the controls were kind of wonky and the camera was kind of wonky. And that sucks because when you're sending out review copies to people to review your game and it still needs a patch, there goes your reputation, man. Like, you could hear it just flushing away down the toilet. Another thing that I didn't like, it's like, there's moments in Yooka-Laylee where I feel like, in Banjo-Kazooie, some of the puzzles were, like, interesting. Like, it kind of gave you a clue of how to figure it out using your arsenal. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing. Like, you had eggs, you had feathers, you had the golden feathers. And in this one, you don't really have an arsenal. You just have moves you can upgrade. There's a certain point, and I don't know, maybe this doesn't make sense to me. There's points where there's like kind of shattered glass, and you're supposed to break it to get through. And you can use the sonar to, you'd think, okay, high pitch, I can make it powerful. I could probably break the glass.
Like game logic, like you assume A is going to do B. You assume that was going to work, and what happened?
No, it didn't work. So you keep doing it, and you're like, what the heck? What's going on here? To later find out you have to actually learn a move where you roll into it. Like, what? Why couldn't I? Like, it made more sense to do something else. Like in Banjo-Kazooie, all right, I need to get to the top of that tree really fast. There's a flying pad over here. Maybe I have to fly through all the way to the top, go through the ring, and a Jiggy will appear. Oh my gosh. Or there was just different ways you could tackle a certain, and you had the freedom to kind of just go in whatever order you kind of wanted to, for the most part.
For the most part.
And that's where I feel like Yooka-Laylee fell. It had a lot of potential. So that's kind of what I want to wrap this up in. We've had good Kickstarter games. We've had bad Kickstarter games. And we've had examples of things that have such high potential but don't meet the needs. But something I want to reiterate is you as the consumer, knowing this is coming from an indie developer, should take the time and don't set your expectations too high. If you set them low and the game comes out to be freaking phenomenal, boom, your mind's gonna be blown.
It's great.
So that's my final thought. What are your final thoughts about indie games, Kickstarter? What's your overall feelings towards it?
I think I'm going to piggyback on what you said. I think Kickstarters are a great thing. I think indie developers who get shut down by the AAAs, because I feel like Shovel Knight has a lot more passion than something like EA's DICE Battlefront. And
oh boy.
I know that's a topic for another situation.
Yeah, it is.
But you just feel like, man, I'm glad that indie developers have a platform to, get that exposure and have great games that you think that would never be popular. And you had the weirdest things where you think nobody, nothing like Yacht come up with Shovel Knight, and then you have people from Yooka-Laylee working on Banjo-Kazooie flopped, or it didn't do as good as we thought it was going to be. So I think, as you said before, when you donate, go with there wholeheartedly, give the money out, support whoever you want to support, just don't expect anything in return. As much as it hurts me, as much as it hurts you, when you donate $40 for a digital deluxe and you get a hat and shirt and all the hype's there and it just falls short, don't go in there blindfolded.
Don't do it.
Be there smart, buddy. Don't do it. That's what I like to end off.
That's a great place, and I think that's a good place to end it off here. Kickstarter, it's a great tool, kind of like Tabletop Simulator. It's a great tool, but if used ineffectively, it could land on its face. So it's something to definitely think about, and do be cautious of where you invest your money, and make sure those expectations aren't too high. But thank you very much, OnPred, for being on the show. As you know, we'll probably have you on the show again sometime soon.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, Zero, and talk to you next time.
Well, that wraps up another episode of Zero's Game Room. Want to give a special thanks to my graphics designer at Trekit on Twitter and at David_Ritter for voicing my intro. Keep up to date with the podcast by liking it on Facebook at Zero's Gaming Room and on Twitter at Zero's Game Room. Until next time, GG with a definite re.